Greetings, everybody. This is Joseph. I'm here at LifeSource. Hope you're having a great day, and I hope that today brings you the opportunity to have some fun, to engage with people, and hopefully represent the gospel. So today, I'm talking a little bit about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I did not know him personally. I was maybe 4 years old. I'm not really sure about that, and if we talk more about that someday, I can explain. But right about then, I came to learn, as everyone else did, the day that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, assassinated, if you will. And in that experience, we all began to think more about the things that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King had said and had taught and had argued. There are a lot of discussions that we have today about his life and his experience that really are taken out of context in some places and really don't express his views or his perspective or his position on politics, on being a Democrat or a Republican, even his engagement and his views relating to other political leaders, other social social activists, those kinds of things, other people who were arguing for civil rights and for equality, and those who weren't. I knew well of his relationship as it was with, for example, Billy Graham. I knew of his relationship as it was with Malcolm X. I had certainly heard of his engagement with other great leaders and other great men and women from other countries. Certainly with his experiences working with the Kennedy administration, with President Lyndon Johnson, and those folks. Learned all of that as I was growing up. And I think it's important that at this time, as we are in this time of what I call turmoil, this period of turmoil in the nation under this new administration, that we also clarify for ourselves what we as Christians ought to be looking at in terms of the experiences relative to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. One of them being this, I think, today is the 6th of April. He was assassinated on the 4th of April in 1968. Many people don't even know that occurred. We are so busy fighting and arguing and resisting and renewing and all kinds of things about America that we have forgotten some basic things. And one of them, I think, is just the review of Dr. King's life. In his view, there are 3 or 4 things that I think it's important that we take a look at. One of them is his mountaintop speech, and that is the speech he gave shortly before he died, very quickly before he died. That next day he was murdered, and many of his top lieutenants and advisors were with him, and it was a shock to so many. Because he had just given such a powerful speech. And in that mountaintop speech, that was the one he said, I've been to the mountaintop, or I've seen the promised land. And I know that I don't think that we'll all get there together. At least we may not all see it at the same time, but we will see the promised land as a people. That was part of what he said. Also, what he said was that longevity has its value. Long living, we all want to live long lives, and that has its value, that has its perspective. But he said, I know, I'm not worried about any of that now. In this last speech he wrote, he said, I just want to do God's will. And he talks about, when you write about me, when you talk about me, of all the things you say about me, of all the stuff that we say about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, he says, tell them that I was a foot soldier for the gospel. I was a representative of the gospel. I was a representative of Christ. That's a great thing to say. For me, that's a wonderful thing to say, and I'm saying that because as I was growing up, I had made up my mind that I really wanted to be like him. Most people don't know that about me. I have an involved background, an involved growing up period in my childhood, growing up in Mississippi, in the backwoods, in the middle of nowhere, about 20 miles outside of Jackson, Mississippi, in a place called Clinton. But I had made up my mind as I was growing up and going to school, and we were all talking about all the important things we wanted to be and do, and especially with regard to civil rights. That was still an issue when I was in school. got stories. Unfortunate. Some sad, some interesting, but we're not going to talk about those today. Just want to make sure that you and I agree on this, that our goal isn't just to be civil rights leaders. Our goal isn't just to be, recognized for doing some important thing, or making sure that we are loved, or that we are in some position of fame or fortune or wealth. That's really not the goal. The goal that I strive for then and I strive for now is life. I strive for life for everyone. I strive, I never had a situation where I was constantly fighting over, being black or white or any of those kinds of things. My goal was really just to make sure that we do what's right. And my goal now is to make sure that we do what's right. So when I was in school and someone asked me what I thought was great about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, was that he really did want salvation and life and success for everyone. It didn't matter to him whether you were black or white. It mattered whether or not you honored God with your life and that you honored others with your life. How can you say that, Joseph? Because all we know about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King today is the marching, the March on Washington and all of those kinds of things. We don't really know what the dream was anymore. We don't even really talk about it. The one in which he said, I have a dream that one day my children will be recognized not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. That was an important statement. That described what Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was about. It really did. Where he said that one day that Jews and Gentiles, white men, black men, people from everywhere all over the world will celebrate, will take hands, join hands and celebrate, with that old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God I'm free at last. Those kinds of things, those were the markers of his perspective. Now, you're going to grow up, ladies and gentlemen, as we get more documents released about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, the FBI spying on him, the CIA spying on him, various arms of government and police and the Justice Department, even the White Houses themselves trying to get some information on him, get some leverage, some political leverage, some personal leverage to be able to force him to resign from public life, to abandon his wife, to embarrass him in some way. You're going to hear all that. That happens. In fact, we see that now. What I'm saying is this: the most important thing you need to remember, that we ought to remember, is that person's desire. When we read the Bible and we read about King David, who was truly loved by God, in that sense, when we read about John the Apostle, who was truly loved by God, there are people whose relationship with God was intimate. Another one is Elijah, Elisha, the prophets themselves. Their relationships with God were intimate and close, but they had all kinds of mess going on in their worlds, because the mess wasn't the important thing. As someone says, it's not about the mess, it's about the message. It's not even about the messenger, it's the message. It's not even about the test, it's about the testimony. And so I want to encourage you, as we look back on the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm one of those folks who studied him greatly. I love talking about it. I knew, his 2 or 3 attempts at suicide. You don't know about that. Maybe you know about the additional relationships, the extramarital relationships in his life. The government gives us plenty of information on that. You may not know that. You may not know about the long letter he wrote to a young man trying to get Dr. King to agree and support him in his presentation of homosexuality as a lifestyle, or those kinds of things. You mean Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King talked about this? There's a letter from him, an exchange between him and a man. I've posted it on the web a few times. But the goal wasn't just because of the life the man lived. The goal in the discussion was about his desire to honor God with his life. And so much of what we do today is about feelings about things, is about emotions about things, and not what our real desire is in this life. So I'm saying to you, this is me, Joseph, saying to you, look, God loves you. He loves everybody. Loves me. And he really does want the best for us. So this is your chance. This is another example to recognize what, for example, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was really about. While we're out yelling chants and arguments and posts and all kinds of ideas and things that in truth mean nothing when you examine them. I'll give you a good example. What does hands off mean? Anybody? What does hands up don't shoot mean? What do these phrases mean? How about Black Lives Matter? There are so many misinterpretations of that, or I should say loose interpretations of that have come to mean all kinds of things to people. There are so many things that we say and we chant and we put forward out into the world and we march to, and we don't even know what they mean. But you should. That was what was important about Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King to me, was that the things he said had a point. The claims he made had a point. The arguments he made were clear. They didn't just revolve around how I feel about my race, how I feel about the darkness or lightness of my skin, how I feel about whether or not anyone wears the same kind of hairstyle or hair color or clothing as I do. It doesn't matter if it doesn't promote life. And there are too many of us arguing over things that don't matter, that no many hill beans in the context of the present, the past, or the future. So, I'm saying this. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's goal was to share with us God's love, and that we ought to share it with each other, regardless of our race, regardless of our sex, regardless of our age, regardless of our sexuality. By the way, yes, there are only two, male and female, man and woman, and boy and girl. All that, just those two sexes, and everything else is feelings. And I'm saying that without fear of contradiction. I've studied that a long time too. And what we have studied is and discovered is that all we really have is our feelings. And how we present ourselves as that's choice. How we put that out to the world is choice. And I'm saying, let's stop putting out our feelings and start putting out some facts that make a difference for people. And that's why I'm Joseph here at LifeSource, offering the opportunity to you to share the gospel and present the word of the Lord to an uncertain world in an uncertain day. You want to talk more? Please write me. Feel free to call me. Feel free to text me, or have a meetup with me. I'm easy about sharing life, because that's my goal. And after the standard of some guy named Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., here on the second day after the anniversary of his death. God bless and peace.